According to the latest April 2025 World Economic Outlook from the IMF, Guyana is now officially the ninth richest country in the world by GDP per capita. This means that the small South American country with a population of less than 1 million is now ranked alongside global heavyweights like Singapore, Switzerland, and Qatar. And even more significantly, Guyana is now statistically richer per person than the United States, the UK, Canada, Germany, and even Japan. So how did Guyana pull this off? And what does this ranking really mean for everyday Guyanese citizens? First, let's explain what this ranking is all about. GDP per capita is simply the country's gross domestic product divided by its population. It gives you an average of how much economic value is produced per person. In Guyana's case, the IMF estimates that its GDP per capita in 2025 is around 37,000 US dollars in nominal terms. On a purchasing power parity basis, that number shoots up to over 90,000 US dollars, placing it firmly in the top 10 globally. This means that Guyana is now ahead of every economy in the G7. But first, let's explain that GDP per capita is not the same as total wealth. Countries like the United States still dominate in nominal GDP, which is the total value of all goods and services produced in a country. When looking at nominal GDP, the US, China, Germany, and Japan dominate this ranking, with America's economy still at the top with 28 trillion US dollars, while Guyana is just under 20 billion. Still, GDP per capita is a powerful indicator of how well a country could be per citizen, and Guyana now finds itself in the company of countries like Singapore, Switzerland, the UAE, and Qatar, nations known for their small size but their immense wealth. So, how did Guyana get here? The story begins in 2015, when ExxonMobil and its partners made the first of many offshore oil discoveries in Guyana. Production began in 2019, and since then, things have accelerated very quickly. By 2025, Guyana was producing 645,000 barrels of oil per day, and that number is projected to reach 1 million barrels per day by 2027. This oil boom has driven the country's massive rise in just 10 years. Guyana has gone from being one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere to one of the wealthiest in the world per capita. But here is where things get really interesting. Guyana has an estimated 11 billion barrels of recoverable oil reserves. Now that's a huge number, but how does it compare to global oil producing countries? For context, Saudi Arabia has over 260 billion barrels of oil. The UAE has about 111 billion barrels, and Venezuela has over 300 billion barrels, although much of that is heavy crude, which is a lot harder to extract. Guyana's reserves are smaller in absolute terms, but remember, Guyana has a population of less than 800,000 people. Compare that to Bahrain with 2 billion barrels and 1.5 million people, and Brunei with 1.1 barrels and 440,000 people. Guyana has 5 to 10 times more oil than both these high-income nations, with a similar or even smaller population. That means that Guyana's oil per capita is among the highest in the world. If Guyana maintains a production rate of 1 million barrels per day, its 11 billion barrels would last over 30 years. An average price of 70 US dollars per barrel, the gross value of its reserves exceeds 770 billion US dollars. Even if the country nets just 25% of that, it is still looking at over 190 billion US dollars in potential revenue, nearly 100 times its current GDP. If this is managed wisely, the country's long-term wealth could mirror that of Norway, which used its oil riches to build one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world, while investing in healthcare, education, and infrastructure. But Norway also got rich through transparency, smart governance, and long-term planning. The question is, can Guyana do the same? To its credit, Guyana isn't betting everything on oil. There are active efforts to diversify the economy. Gold remains a major export, alongside rice, sugar, long-standing staples of the Guyanese economy. Agriculture is still a big employer, and government subsidies have helped to modernize the sector. There's also a push to grow ecotourism, leveraging Guyana's untouched forests, waterfalls, and unique wildlife to attract visitors. Conservation-friendly tourism could provide both revenue and sustainable jobs. So while oil still dominates the headlines, the country is not ignoring its other sectors. The government is also already using its oil income to fund major infrastructure upgrades. There are new highways, bridges, ports, and there's investment in hospitals and clinics. And the country is modernizing its education system, including free tuition for select university programs. There are also plans to invest in digital transformation, energy diversification, and more resilient public services. Now, all of this is good, but many Guyanese say they're still not feeling better off. Despite the wealth stats, income inequality remains very high and poverty is still widespread. Some rural areas still lack basic infrastructure, and critics argue that the oil boom is yet to benefit the average citizen. And at the center of this controversy is ExxonMobil. Under Guyana's current deal, ExxonMobil and its partners receive a significant share of the profits. Guyana gets 14.5% in royalties plus 50% of profits after cost recovery. But critics argue that these terms are too generous and the country has sold its oil resources too cheaply. This debate has sparked political tension and a growing demand for renegotiation. Guyana's future prosperity is not without risk. First, oil prices. Guyana's break-even cost for production is about 28 to 35 US dollars per barrel. This gives the country some cushion, but a major crash, say down to $30, could wreck government revenue projections. Second, its limited oil reserves. While 11 billion barrels is massive for Guyana, it's still tiny compared to global players. Without ongoing exploration and new discoveries, Guyana's oil era might only last 3 to 4 decades. And third, the border dispute with Venezuela. In 2023, Venezuela reignited claims over Guyana's Essequibo region, which includes much of the country's offshore oil reserves. The case is now before the International Court of Justice, but any escalation could spook investors or trigger geopolitical instability. And finally, Guyana heads to the polls in September 2025. The oil boom and the ExxonMobil contract are central election issues. Opposition parties are calling for a renegotiation of the oil contracts, stronger transparency, and better wealth distribution. This election could decide not just who governs Guyana, but how the country manages its oil future. Will it become the Norway of the Western Hemisphere, or another oil-rich country where wealth flows to the top and the people are left behind? Let me know what you think in the comments. Guyana has pulled off a major transformation, from obscurity to the 9th richest country in the world per capita in less than a decade. But with great wealth comes great responsibility. What happens next will depend on how the country manages its oil, its politics, and its people. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is this Guyana's moment, or is the real challenge just beginning? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fact-based and concise Caribbean news and information. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.